Joan of Arc, known in French as Jeanne d'Arc, remains one of the most iconic and enigmatic figures in world history. Born around 1412 in the small village of DOMRÉMY, in the northeastern part of France, Joan was a peasant girl from humble origins. She grew up during one of the most tumultuous periods in European history, the 100 Years' War, a prolonged conflict between France and England over claims to the French throne. As battles raged and political instability plagued her homeland, Joan would emerge as an unlikely savior, guided by a powerful sense of divine purpose. From an early age, Joan exhibited deep piety and spiritual conviction. By the time she was 13, she claimed to have received divine visions and heard heavenly voices, those of Saint Michael the Archangel, Saint Catherine of Alexandria, and Saint Margaret of Antioch, urging her to support Charles VII, the uncrowned King of France, and help expel the English from French soil. These revelations compelled Joan to believe that she had been chosen by God to carry out a sacred mission, to lead the French army to victory and ensure the rightful coronation of Charles at Reims Cathedral. At a time when women had no place in military leadership and when illiterate peasants had no influence in royal courts, Joan's unwavering faith and determination propelled her into the heart of political and military affairs. After gaining the trust of local officials and enduring grueling interrogations by clergy and nobles, Joan was eventually granted an audience with Charles VII. Her sincerity, prophetic confidence, and deep spiritual authority convinced him and his advisors to place her at the head of the French army. Wearing white armor and carrying a banner emblazoned with the image of Christ and fleur-de-lis, Joan of Arc led French forces into key battles, most notably the Siege of Orléans in 1429. Against all odds, she galvanized troops, raised morale, and turned the tide of war. Her victories not only broke the English siege, but also reignited French nationalism and hope. With her leadership, Charles VII was successfully crowned at Reims, fulfilling what Joan had prophesied. Joan's mission, however, was not merely military. It was deeply spiritual and patriotic. She viewed her efforts as part of a divine plan to restore justice and sovereignty to France. Despite later being captured by Burgundian allies of the English, tried for heresy, and tragically executed at the age of 19, Joan's legend only grew after her death. In 1920, she was canonized as a saint of the Roman Catholic Church, symbolizing faith, courage, and martyrdom. Joan of Arc's story endures as a testament to the power of conviction, the courage of youth, and the belief that one voice, guided by purpose, can change the course of history. After securing an audience with the Dauphin Charles at Chinon in early 1429, Joan of Arc underwent theological examination at Poitiers to confirm the orthodoxy of her visions. Despite her youth, simplicity, and lack of formal education, the clergy found no fault in her faith and character. Impressed by her sincerity and unusual resolve, the French leadership took the extraordinary step of allowing Joan to join the military effort against the English. She was given a suit of armor, a sword believed to have been divinely revealed to her, and a standard bearing the names of Jesus and Mary. Her arrival at the Siege of Orléans in April 1429 marked a pivotal moment. The city had been under English siege for months, and French morale was dangerously low. When Joan entered Orléans, she was met with skepticism by some commanders, but her presence sparked a revival of spirit among soldiers and civilians alike. She rode at the front lines, fearlessly carrying her banner and encouraging troops to press forward. Within days of coordinated assaults and under her inspirational leadership, the English were pushed back, and the siege was lifted on May 8, 1429. This victory was not just military, it was symbolic, restoring faith in Charles VII's claim to the throne and in France's ability to repel the invaders. Buoyed by this success, Joan led a series of military campaigns through the Loire Valley, capturing key strategic points such as Jargeau, Meung-sur-Loire, and Beaugency. These victories cleared the path to Reims, the traditional site of French royal coronations. Despite opposition from some royal advisors, Joan persisted in advocating for Charles's coronation. In July 1429, her determination paid off. Charles was crowned King Charles VII in Reims Cathedral, with Joan standing beside him, her mission largely fulfilled. Joan's reputation spread like wildfire throughout France. She became known as La Pucelle d'Orléans, the Maid of Orléans, a title celebrating her virginity, purity, and divine mission. Yet her success made her enemies more determined. The English, threatened by the symbolic and strategic danger she posed, intensified their efforts to capture her. Many within the French court also grew wary of her influence and military prominence. In May 1430, while leading a campaign to liberate Compiègne, Joan was captured by Burgundian forces, French allies of the English. She was handed over to the English, who arranged for her to be tried for heresy and witchcraft by a pro-English church court in Rouen. The trial was politically motivated, seeking to discredit Charles VII by invalidating Joan's divine guidance in his coronation. Despite harsh imprisonment, isolation, and threats of torture, Joan stood firm in her faith and maintained the authenticity of her visions. Captured by the Burgundians in May 1430 and sold to the English for 10,000 livres, Joan of Arc was taken to the city of Rouen, then under English control. There, a church court, presided over by Bishop Pierre Cauchon, a staunch English supporter, began proceedings against her. The trial, held from January to May 1431, was political in nature but disguised as a religious inquisition. The English knew that if they could condemn Joan as a heretic and sorceress, they could discredit King Charles VII, whom she had helped crown, and weaken French morale. Despite being a teenager, Joan showed remarkable strength and intelligence during her interrogations. Isolated, ill, and kept under harsh conditions, she was questioned repeatedly without legal counsel. Her accusers focused on everything from her visions and voices to her choice of male clothing, trying to paint her as a blasphemer and a tool of the devil. Joan calmly affirmed that her voices were divine, sent from Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret, and that she had always acted in obedience to God. After months of pressure and deception, the judges extracted a forced confession in which Joan briefly recanted her visions. But when she realized the deceit, she courageously withdrew her confession, reaffirming her faith and her mission. As a result, she was declared a relapsed heretic, a crime punishable by death. On May 30th, 1431, at just 19 years old, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake in the marketplace of Rouen. Witnesses reported that she faced her death with courage, asking for a crucifix to be held before her eyes, crying out the name of Jesus with her last breath. Joan's execution sent shockwaves through France. Though the English sought to erase her influence, they unintentionally martyred her. 25 years later, in 1456, at the request of Joan's mother and King Charles VII, the Catholic Church reopened her trial. After a lengthy investigation, she was declared innocent and a martyr. Her legacy only grew stronger with time. In the centuries that followed, Joan of Arc became a powerful symbol of French unity, resistance, and divine faith. She inspired countless poets, artists, writers, and political leaders. Her image was invoked in times of war and revolution, and her name became synonymous with patriotism and courage. In 1920, nearly 500 years after her death, the Catholic Church canonized her as Saint Joan of Arc, honoring her as a holy virgin and martyr. Today, she remains one of the most venerated saints in both religious and secular history, a national heroine of France, a spiritual icon, and a testament to the strength of conviction in the face of oppression. Scene 1, 0010, narration. In the heart of medieval France, a young girl born into poverty would rise to change the course of history. Joan of Arc, a simple peasant from Domremy, would become a divine warrior, leading armies, inspiring kings, and leaving a legacy as powerful as her unwavering faith. She was no ordinary girl. She claimed to hear the voices of saints. She believed she was chosen by God to save France from ruin. This is the story of courage, sacrifice, and divine conviction. Visuals: map of medieval France, painting of Domrémy. Village child Joan looking toward the sky. Voice call-out illustrations: Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, Saint Margaret. Scene 2, 101-230. Narration. Joan was born in 1412 in a small village. The 100 Years' War raged between France and England. By the time she was a teenager, much of northern France was under English control. But Joan had a calling. At age 13, she began hearing divine voices urging her to support Charles VII and help drive out the English invaders. Visuals: war-torn French countryside. Young Joan praying or hearing voices, English and Burgundian flags over French towns. Portrait of Charles VII looking uncertain. Scene 3, 231-4. Narration. With determination far beyond her years, Joan traveled to the court of Charles VII. Dressed in male attire, she demanded an audience with the Dauphin. Her conviction impressed the court. After intense questioning and a theological examination, Joan was granted command of troops. It was unprecedented. A teenage peasant girl leading an army? Visuals: Joan at court, Charles VII observing her. Medieval courtroom armor being prepared for her troop rally under her command. Scene 4, 401-530. Narration. Her first major victory came at the Siege of Orléans. Joan, now just 17, led the French forces to a miraculous victory, lifting the siege in just 9 days. It turned the tide of the war and elevated her to a legendary status among the people. Visuals: battle scenes at Orléans, Joan leading charge. With banner crowds cheering in the city, Charles VII being crowned in Reims Cathedral. Scene 5, 531-720. Narration. But fame was dangerous. In 1430, Joan was captured by the Burgundians and sold to the English. She was imprisoned. And soon her greatest battle began, not on the battlefield, but in court. Visuals: Joan's capture, dark, dramatic imagery, imprisonment scenes, English clergymen preparing trial, torture devices shown symbolically, without gore. Scene 6, 701-830. Narration. Joan stood trial for heresy in Rouen. It was politically motivated. She defended herself bravely. Despite no evidence of wrongdoing, she was declared a heretic. On May 30th, 1431, Joan was burned at the stake. She was only 19. Her final words: "Jesus, Jesus." Visuals: courtroom sketch, Joan tied to stake fire, rising with a cross shown in the sky. People weeping or looking shocked. Slow fade to black. Scene 7, 831-10. Narration. 25 years after her death, Joan was declared innocent in a retrial. Her legacy only grew stronger. In 1920, the Catholic Church canonized her as Saint Joan of Arc. Today, she is a symbol of faith, courage, and national pride. Visuals: retrial documents, statues and stained glass of Joan canonization event in 1920, pilgrimage sites in France. Scene 8, 10:01-12 hours. Narration. Joan of Arc's impact extends beyond religion or war. She is a feminist icon, a national symbol, and a timeless story of standing by your convictions against all odds. Her story has inspired countless books, plays, films, and movements. She teaches us that true leadership comes from purpose, not privilege. Visuals: Joan in modern culture, book covers, movies, French flags waving, women leaders citing Joan youth, raising banners of justice and faith. Scene 9, 12:01-1330. Narration. She led not through might, but through divine strength. She wasn't born a warrior, she became one by listening to a calling higher than herself. In today's world of uncertainty and conflict, Joan of Arc's story reminds us of the power of faith, justice, and unshakable resolve. Visuals: Joan's banner waving in wind, her statue lit at night. Peaceful French countryside, close-up of her eyes, animated, artistic, scene, 10, 1331, 15, 16. Narration: Joan of Arc will forever remain a guiding light, a teenage girl who followed the voice of her soul and changed the fate of a nation. Her life, short but extraordinary, continues to inspire generations. And that legacy will never burn out. Visuals: timeline of Joan's life. Artistic montage of key moments. Quote fade in. One life is all we have. End screen with subscribe button and channel logo.